They like to believe they choose when they leave. That's the part I enjoy the most. From your side of the windshield, it always looks the same. A narrow road, trees pressed close on both sides. The same strip of asphalt you drive every day on your way home. Low beams on, fingers tired around the wheel. Some pointless song on the radio so you don't have to listen to what's outside. My voice, for example. I wasn't born with this road. There was no ritual here, no symbols painted in blood, no ancient curse buried under the pavement. There was just an accident, years ago, on a wet night when nobody looked twice at the body in the ditch. Nobody heard what he heard. Nobody heard the whisper that clung to his last breath and refused to let go. I did. I stayed. At first, I was only a faint echo in the trees, a small distortion in the rustle of leaves, a seam in the silence that no one noticed. Cars sped by. Headlights carved me out of the dark for a second and were gone. I waited. I watched. I learned. Then he came. The first one who stepped off the road. He was tied in the way you don't fix with sleep. His eyes kept rolling shut as he drove. His hands shook on the steering wheel. Night shift, double overtime. A life slowly shaved down mile after mile. He fought it as long as he could. Then, right in the middle of this stretch, he gave up. He didn't even stop because of me. That's the amusing detail. He pulled over because his body was shutting down. The car rolled to a slow, crooked stop at the shoulder. He turned off the engine. The radio went quiet. A sudden silence crawled over his skin. Outside, the trees were nothing but black shapes. A wall on each side of the road, no moon. I saw too that. He leaned back, closed his eyes, and tried to steady his breathing. That's when I spoke. Not loudly, not with any threat, just a soft weight in the air, tucked inside the sigh of the wind against the metal. It's fine, just a minute. Step out, get some fresh air. He opened his eyes, frowning, looked around. The road was empty. No cars, no houses, no lights. No one talking to him. So he did what you always do. He told himself that thought was his. The door creaked as he opened it. The sound went nowhere, swallowed by the trees. He stepped out. Gravel cracked under his shoes. The forest in front of him was a single mass of darkness, a gap between trunks that looked less like a path and more like a mouth. Just a bit further, I breathed. Away from the road. It's quieter there. He hesitated. What am I doing? He muttered, and then he walked. Because that's something else you don't want to admit. I don't have to drag you. I don't need chain, claws, or teeth. I only need you to move your own feet. 1 step, 2. The sound of the road dimmed behind him. His car sat there with its lifeless dashboard, like a shell someone had just crawled out of. He brushed against wet leaves. Branches shifted, closing in behind him. By the 3rd step, he couldn't see the asphalt. By the 5th, his eyes tried to adjust to the dark. I didn't let them. I gave him something else instead. Dad? A small voice asked ahead of him. A child's voice. The one he had buried years ago. His breath caught, his heart squeezed, hard and desperate. Logic cracked. Grief pushed through the hole. He didn't ask how it was possible. He didn't question why the voice sounded exactly the same as in his memories, untouched by time, clean and bright, untouched by soil and coffin wood. "Is that you?" he choked out. I answered from all around him. "Come on, Dad, I'm here, just a little closer." He stumbled forward. Mud clung to his boots. A branch tore his sleeve and blood warmed his skin. None of it mattered. The voice pulled him onward. I parted roots for him, spun the shadows so they always formed the outline of a small shape just ahead, never quite in view, always almost within reach. He walked so far that even if he had screamed, no one would have heard. He didn't scream. He sobbed when I finally wrapped around him. I didn't break his bones. I didn't spill his blood. I didn't leave a crime scene. I don't like messy edges. This game is better when all you leave behind is a silent car by the side of the road, keys still in the ignition, door maybe slightly open. A man who simply decided to step off the road and into the trees. A disappearance with no signs of struggle. They love that phrase. After him, there were more. The road became a story. First, just among neighbors. Don't stop there at night. Weird things happen. People vanish. Then on forums, local news. Low-effort videos with shaky footage and red circles drawn over nothing. That part doesn't bother me. Let them get details wrong. Let them invent nonsense. What matters is that the right words reach the right ears. The curious ones. The ones who need proof. The ones who want to feel something sharp and real in a life that has gone numb. They drive out here on purpose. Middle of the night, cameras ready, flashlights, nervous jokes. They park exactly where the air is thickest, right where the trees lean a little closer over the asphalt, as if they're listening, as if they're bending in to smell who arrived this time. They turn off the engine. They step out. The forest gives them nothing at first. A distant owl, the twitch of leaves, the hum of insects. "Did you hear that?" one of them asks. I drop a twig, just at the edge of the flashlight beam. They jump, swing the light around. Only trunks and undergrowth stare back at them. "Probably an animal," someone says. They need that explanation. They cling to it. My work begins with taking those away. I start with their voices. I make one of them hear his name called from deeper in the trees, in the exact tone his friend uses when he's annoyed. He turns, shining the flashlight, expecting to see him there. No one. "Stop screwing around," he grumbles. The others laugh, but something small and cold wakes up in their chests. Then I show them something, a figure between the trunks, thin, too still, too tall. No face, just a darker shape standing in darker shadows. "Do you see that?" one whispers. "Yeah. What the hell is that?" They start recording. They really believe the camera protects them, as if capturing me in pixels gives them control, as if anything you point at me can define what I am. The flashlight shakes as they move it. The figure vanishes when the beam passes over it. They swing back. Nothing. Just trees. They check the screen. And there I am, closer. Behind one of them, just over a shoulder, a hand resting where no one felt a touch. A body standing beside the parked car in a frame they swear was empty when they shot it. The laughter stops. "Okay, enough. Let's go back to the car," someone says. That's the smart choice. It doesn't matter. They think the danger lives in the forest and the safety lies on the road. They think the line between safe and not safe is where the asphalt ends and the dirt begins. They never understand that the line is me. It isn't painted. It doesn't match the edge of the shoulder. You only know you've crossed it when I speak to you alone, when one of them drifts just a little behind the group, standing there with his flashlight pointed into a gap between trunks, squinting as if he might see whatever he thinks is hiding there. "Hello?" he calls. "Anyone there?" I answer right beside his ear. "Yes." It never records clearly. The microphone catches it as static, a warped murmur. But his body understands every word. His neck prickles. His stomach drops. The back of his eyes burns. Then I say his full name, perfectly, with the exact cadence his mother used when she was angry, or his lover, or a voice he hasn't heard in years but still dreams about. He freezes. The others shout for him from near the car. "Dude, come on, let's bounce." Their voices are thin and far away. Mine is heavy and close. "Just one step," I tell him. That's all I ever really want. Not a run, not a plunge into the depths of the forest, just that one small step out of the cone of flashlight, out of the shared human light, into the quiet weight of me. He gives it to me. I fold the world around him. No scream. When his friends turn back, the flashlight is lying on the ground, beam tilted up, lighting nothing but a tangle of leaves. They curse. They call his name. They push into the trees a little and stop, scared of getting lost themselves. Eventually, they decide he's playing a joke. They decide he'll show up tomorrow with a stupid grin and some excuse. He doesn't. When the search teams come, I let them find the car. I let them find broken branches, footprints that go nowhere, dogs whining on the end of their leashes, turning in circles, confused. They label it missing person. They add another red pin to some digital map. And you, sitting wherever you are, hearing this, you tell yourself, it would never happen to you. You'd never stop on a road like that. You'd never go into the trees. You'd never follow a voice that shouldn't be there. Of course, you all say that. Until one night, you're driving home on a road you don't usually take. You're more tired than you thought. The lines on the asphalt blur a bit. The radio cuts out between stations and doesn't find another. For a moment, all you hear is the engine and your own heartbeat and the feeling that someone is watching from the dark between the trees. You tell yourself you'll keep going. You won't. You'll decide, just for a moment, to pull over. Just to rest your eyes. Just to breathe. You'll turn off the engine. You'll open the door. And when your foot touches the ground, when the cool night air slips into the car and brushes your face, you'll hear a voice that sounds exactly like your own thought. Just a step. You'll tell yourself you're still in control. They thought the mountain was the danger. They were wrong. The mountain only provided the ledges, The cracks, the ice, the places where a body can disappear and never be recovered. Useful scenery, nothing must. I was the one who spoke. They arrived in the late afternoon when the sky was still pretending to be calm. The last light stretched across the snow, already turning grey along the edges. 6 of them, dragging gear and bravado, breathing steam into the cold air. You know the type. Experienced enough to underestimate the real risk. Tired enough of normal life to think pain, cold and thin air count as freedom. They had done other peaks. They had posted other photos. They had survived other storms. So they believed that meant something here. They didn't notice the first time the wind repeated their laughter. They didn't notice when the echo answered a question that no one actually asked. They only started paying attention when I used their own voices. The mountain path curled around a massive face of rock, half bare, half crusted with old ice. Snow clouds piled up on the horizon, heavy and swollen, but still far enough away to be easy to ignore. "We'll be at the hut before it hits," said the leader. I could taste the certainty in his voice. He wore it like armor. He needed the others to believe him. They did. They always do. They followed, boots crunching in the hard snow, spikes biting into the path where it narrowed. Below, the valley dropped away in a lazy, endless slope. Above, ridges like broken teeth soared at the sky. The first voice I borrowed was his. They were roped together in pairs when I tried it. One of them lingered behind to adjust his crampons. He knelt, cursing under his breath, fingers numbing in the air. The others trudged on. "Hey, hurry up," I said, using the leader's tone, his rough impatience. The man jerked his head up. Yeah, I'm coming," he muttered automatically. He hadn't registered that the leader was still far ahead. His real voice bent around a rock face, too distant to be that clear. By the time the thought flickered through his mind, it was too late to matter. Small things never seem important to you. A word that sounds slightly off, a call that seems too close. You smooth the edges with logic. You tell yourself you misheard. You help me without realizing. The wind picked up as they gained altitude. It pushed against them in short, violent bursts, like something testing its strength. Snow that had slept peacefully on ledges and shelf edges began to stir. "Storm's moving faster than predicted," one of them said. "Still fine," replied their leader. "The hut's close." I smiled. The hut was close, but I was closer. They reached a narrow traverse, a strip of snow cut into the mountainside, nowhere thicker than a boot length. The drop beneath it was not dramatic. No sheer vertical cliff, just a steep, white descent that would turn a fall into a long, cold slide into rocks you never see coming. One by one, they crossed. Their axes bit into the slope above, boots shuffling side by side, eyes fixed on the path, not daring to look down. The rope between them was their comfort, their invisible promise. If one falls, the others will hold. You love that belief, that someone will always hold. Halfway across, I used another voice. "Guys, wait up," I shouted behind them, perfect copy of the youngest's tone, breathless, cheerful, just loud enough to cut through the wind. The man at the back flinched, turned his head. There was no one behind him, just the track they had carved already disappearing under drifting snow. He frowned. "What is it?" the climber in front of him asked. "Thought he said something," the last one answered. "Who?" "He's right there," the other snapped, jerking his head toward the front of the line, where the real young climber was moving, hunched forward, totally silent. The backman's throat went dry. He told himself it was just the wind. He was wrong. By the time they reached the other side, the storm had crawled close enough to show its teeth. The sky above them was no longer open. It was a lid. Snow started falling in earnest, thick, drifting flakes that blurred edges and flattened distance. They pulled up their hoods and kept moving. The mountain hut was just a rectangle of stone sitting on a ledge, shutters fastened, door heavy. It smelled of old smoke and cold wood inside. They stumbled in, slammed the storm out, and filled the silence with their own noise. Cooking, jokes, clinking metal. They convinced themselves they were safe for the night. They trusted thick walls and their shared warmth. They trusted the plan. None of them noticed the moment my voice slipped inside with them. It came when the youngest stepped outside to piss. The door shut behind him with a heavy thud. Wind slapped his face. Snow clawed at his eyes. He took a few steps away from the hut, annoyed, tight-eyed, wanting only to return to his place by the small gas stove. That's when he heard it. "Hey," someone called. "Over here." It sounded like one of the women, calm, casual, as if she'd stepped out after him and moved just out of sight. He squinted into the dark. Her headlamp was still visible through the hut window, a small, moving star. He should have thought more about that. He didn't. "What?" he shouted back. "Come look at this. I think there's another track," I answered, still wearing her voice, threading it through the gusts of wind, so it sounded distant and real. The snow in front of him moved in swirling sheets. Shadows of rocks shifted as his headlamp beam bounced. "Where are you?" he asked. "Just a bit further," I said. "Don't shout. You'll wake them." That was the first night. The quiet, practical reason to obey. He walked away from the hut. His boots sank deeper with each step. Light from the window dimmed at his back. The sound of the others talking, laughing, arguing over whose turn it was to cook, faded to a muffled hum. "Here," I said. "Down a bit." He stopped at the top of a small slope, breath tearing at his chest, sweat chilling under his layers. The beam of his lamp trembled over the snow, picking out a faint line of depressions leading further down the mountain, half filled, half smudged. "See?" I whispered in his ear. He shivered. "Whose are those?" he whispered. I let him answer himself. Maybe the hut's supposed to be empty, he thought. Maybe someone else tried to make it up during the last storm and turned back. Maybe they're still out there. He imagined a figure stumbling in whiteout conditions, alone, close to collapsing. He imagined being that figure. He took another step. The slope was steeper than it looked. Snow shifted under his weight. He slid a little, caught himself with his axe, cursed, and kept going. "Wait," he called low. "Where are you?" "Keep coming," I said, now with the leader's voice, firm, certain, impossible to argue with. Back at the hut, the real leader raised his head, frowning without knowing why. He thought he heard his own voice, and then he shrugged it off, because that's what you do when reality bends a little. You don't examine it. You straighten it with denial. Outside, the young climber followed my words down the slope. When he was far enough that the hut window was nothing but a dull glow, when the wind swallowed the last thread of human sound, I told him the truth in a tone that was not quite any of them. Here. He turned his head. He saw nothing. He never saw the drop. The cornice looked solid in the light of his lamp, just another smooth bulge of snow. But under it there was nothing. Air, a hollow made by wind and time. He stepped onto it with complete trust. The snow gave way with a soft sigh. He didn't even have time to scream properly before the world tilted and swallowed him. His body hit hard surfaces you will never name and came to rest when no casual rescue team would ever look. I took his voice with me when I left the broken shape where it landed. Inside the hut, a little later, someone noticed his absence. "Where'd he go?" one of them asked, peering around the cramped room. "He went to take a leak," another said. "He's probably back in a sec." Minutes passed. The storm screamed against the shutters. "He's taking a while," the leader murmured. They argued about whether to go out. Headlamps were strapped on, gloves pulled up. Worry fought with cold, with fatigue, with fear of stepping into a white void where up and down blur. The leader decided. "I'll go," he said. "No, we go in pairs," the woman snapped. "You know the rules." "I said I'll go," he repeated. I liked him. He stepped out into the storm, rope tied loosely around his waist, the other end held by the woman at the door. Snow tried to claw his eyes out, but he forced himself forward, boots feeling blindly for stable ground. "He won't be far," he shouted over his shoulder. "He's not stupid." I almost laughed. He found the tracks leading away from the hut. Only a few of them survived under the fresh snow, shallow dents marking the start of the slope. He knelt, felt them with his gloved hand, heart sinking. "What the hell were you doing?" he muttered. "Down here," I called to him. His head snapped up. "Where?" he shouted back. "Down," I repeated, using the lost boy's voice now. Strained, weak, with just enough pain to turn logic off. "I slipped. Rope got cut. I think I broke something," he swallowed. "You idiot," he breathed, starting down the slope, digging his axe in carefully. "Careful," I whispered. "The snow's weird." He heard it as concern. It was hunger. The woman at the door felt the rope twitch. "You see him?" she yelled. "Yeah," he lied, because that's what leaders do. "Stay put. I got him." The storm laughed all around us. He reached the broken edge of the cornice. I let him go, just close enough to see where the snow changed texture, where a few cracks spiderwebbed out from a sagging lip. "I'm here," I said, from below him. "Please, don't leave me." He planted his axe, leaned out a little, trying to see past the swirling white. He saw just enough. A darker hole, a hint of depth, a shape that could be a body. He shifted his weight. The crack under his feet whispered. Then it roared, the world dropped. The woman at the hut door screamed as the rope went tight, yanking her forward. It burned through her gloves before she let it go, palms tearing open. Outside, the mountain accepted another offering. I took another voice. Inside the hut, the remaining four argued, cried, called, blamed. They told themselves the two had taken shelter somewhere lower, that they'd find them in the morning, that no one just disappears. They were wrong. By the time dawn smeared a dirty light across the snow, they were all mine, not with blood on the walls or bodies torn apart in some dramatic spectacle. No. One by one, they stepped into the storm when they thought they heard someone calling, "Here, help, don't leave me." Always a familiar voice, always just a little further than it should be. Rescue teams came later, of course. They combed the slopes with dogs and poles, probing the snow. They marked safe paths and dangerous ones, guessed at avalanche patterns, drew careful red lines on maps. They found some equipment. They declared some official explanations. Accidents, bad conditions, human error. And on clear days, when others climb the same route, they sometimes pause and swear they heard something in the wind, their own name, a friend's laugh, a broken, hoarse voice begging not to be left alone. Some of them walk faster, some of them stop and listen. You know which ones interest me. If you ever find yourself on a mountain with the storm closing in and you hear someone calling from the white, you'll tell yourself you're smarter. You'll say you'll stick to the plan. You'll say you won't follow a voice you can't see. Of course, you'll say that now. But when the wind brings you the exact sound of someone you care about saying, "Please, just don't leave me here," you'll take one step off the safe line. Just one. And I'll be waiting in the white, exactly where your voice will sound best when I use it on the next ones. They like to blame the war. They say the base swallowed people because of enemy action, bad intel, classified operations. It's comforting to you to think someone out there is responsible. It wasn't them. It was me. The base above is dead now. The barracks are empty. Windows blown out, graffiti sprayed over old warnings. Grass has cracked the concrete. Rust has bitten through the fences. But down here, under the weight of all that concrete and history, the air still tastes the same. Sweat, metal, fear that pretends to be discipline. You call it the locker room. To me, it's home. It started simple. A room lined with metal lockers, rows of benches bolted to cracked tiles, showers in the back, a long mirror above the sinks. Nothing mystical. Just a place where they undressed their bodies and tried to strip their minds as well. They came here before missions and after them. They left pieces of themselves all over, dog tags clinking against bare skin, photos taped inside locker doors, notes scratched into paint with keys or knives. I was born from those pieces. From the anger pressed between two sets of folded fatigues, from the dread hiding behind a forced joke, from the tiny tremor in the hands of a man putting on his boots for what he knew was not a training exercise this time. All that tension soaked into the metal, into the tiles, into the mirror. You don't realize how much of you sticks to the things you touch every day. I do. The first disappearance was treated as treason. He was young. They always are, at the start. He came in alone after lights out, boots echoing on the tiles, the sound too loud in the empty room. He was supposed to be on patrol, but he traded shifts, cut corners, lied. He slammed his locker open, the metal ringing sharp. "I'm done," he muttered. He yanked clothes out, stuffed others in a bag. His hands shook. Not from fear of bullets, from fear of staying, from fear of going back out there. He looked at himself in the mirror and didn't like what he saw. That's when I spoke to him for the first time. "Leave," I whispered. He thought it was his own thought. Of course he did. He stared at his reflection a second longer. The mirror threw him back, pale, sweating, lips pressed tight. Behind him, rows of lockers stood like soldiers at attention. "Just walk out," I breathed. "Not to the barracks, not to the offices, past the showers. There's another way." He frowned. His eyes slid to the back of the room, where the showers waited in darkness. A single dim bulb flickered above the entrance, buzzing like a trapped fly. There was no other way, but he wanted there to be one so badly that the lie fit perfectly. He walked between the benches, boots clunking. His shadow moved with him, stretched on the floor by the failing light. At the edge of the shower room, he hesitated. "Keep going," I said from the mirror behind him. He didn't turn. He didn't notice that his reflection didn't match the angle of his head. He stepped into the dark. The tile under his feet felt different there, cooler, slightly uneven, as if something had shifted underneath. He moved past the first row of shower heads, their pipes like exposed bones. The smell changed too. Less dust, more damp, like the room had been sweating in secret. He reached the last stall. There was a wall there, solid. He put his hand on it. "Here," I whispered, and it felt soft. By the time they noticed he was gone, his locker was open, and his bag lay half-packed on the bench. The photo taped inside showed a smiling girl who would never get a goodbye. They accused him of desertion. They searched the base, the town, the roads. No one opened the last shower stall and saw the faint impression of fingers in tile that should have been too hard to grip. He was the first. After that, it got easier. The war ended for them eventually. Flags came down, orders were burned, files were locked away. The base was decommissioned. They turned the power off, shut the doors, and left. They didn't turn me off. Years later, when the disappearances started, they thought it was just rumor. Teenagers breaking into the ruins at night. Urban explorers filming grainy videos for the internet. First, it was a boy who didn't come home. He and his friends had squeezed through a broken door, laughing too loud to hear me at first. Their phone lights bounced off walls, stenciled with fading letters. Authorized personnel only. No weapons in the locker room. Shower before entering barracks. They filmed everything. Every peeling sign, every rusted door. Finally, they found the stairs leading down. The concrete steps sweated moisture. The air cooled and thickened. Someone joked about ghost soldiers. Someone else laughed to cover the shiver. Their lights found the locker room. Rows of metal, some doors hanging open, some still closed. A bench in the middle, covered in dust. The mirror, cracked in 3 places, reflecting thin beams of light. Damn. "This is creepy," one said, but he smiled for the camera anyway. "I like cameras. They make you look where I want." "Check the lockers," another said. They split up, phones in one hand, the other hand grabbing handles and yanking doors. Echoes ran up and down the rows, empty hooks, broken coat hangers, a forgotten boot, a rusted bar of soap. "Nothing," someone muttered. Wrong. I was everywhere. It was the boy in the back who noticed the mirror. "Dude, come look at this," he said. He angled his phone so the others could see in the screen. They gathered behind him, breath fogging the glass. At first, it showed exactly what it should. 6 faces, uneven light, lockers behind them. Then, little by little, it changed. He didn't notice the extra locker door that appeared on the left side, the one that wasn't really there behind them. The others didn't notice that one of their reflections forgot to move its mouth when it laughed. You don't pay attention to what you expect to be normal. I bent their images slowly, pulling them just out of sync. A blink too late, a head tilt that didn't match. The smallest one turned to say something to his friend and caught his own reflection still facing forward. He stopped. "Did you see that?" he whispered. "What?" "My reflection. He trailed off, staring at his own face. I smiled with it. Not in the real room, only in the glass. His reflection's lips peeled back slightly, just enough, in a grin he didn't feel. The others were still checking their phones, panning around, joking about posting this later. "Guys," he said, voice higher now. "Guys, look at the mirror." They did, and for a second, everything lined up again. 6 boys, 6 reflections. Perfect. They exhaled. "You're freaking out," one laughed, shoving him lightly. "Yeah, whatever. Let's go downstairs," another suggested. "Basement of the basement," someone joked. They turned away, all but one. The boy in the back, the first to see it, stayed staring at the mirror. The glass stared back. The crack running down the center of it cut straight through his face, splitting him in two. "Don't look at them," I murmured. "Just look at me." His reflection leaned closer on its own. He didn't move. His real body stood frozen, breath stuck in his chest, eyes too wide. In the mirror, he stepped forward. One slow, deliberate motion. "Guys," he croaked. None of them heard him over their own footsteps. "Come closer," I said. His reflection lifted its hand, palm flat against the inside of the mirror. On his side, his fingers twitched, wanting to match the movement and not understanding why. The glass didn't feel hard. It felt like cold skin. When he finally made contact, when his real hand pressed against the mirror, the other side pushed back, then pulled. They found his phone on the floor later. The footage stopped, just as his reflected hand started to sink into the glass. No one believed the other boys when they tried to explain. Authorities decided he'd run off, fallen, gotten lost. They searched the upper levels. No one went down into the locker room, not officially. That came later. A small unit. 4 men and 1 woman sent to assess the structure after more reports of break-ins. They came in daytime with real flashlights, hard hats, radios that crackled and spat. They thought professionalism would make them safe, made them predictable. They swept the upper floors, bored voices bouncing up the stairwells. Third floor clear, mess hall empty, barracks are a mess, but nothing alive. Eventually, their light found the same stairs. Concrete, moisture, the smell of old metal. Locker area below, one of them reported. Proceed, their commander crackled through the radio. They obeyed. I love obedience. The locker room greeted them with silence. Their flashlights slid over locker doors, dust motes swirling in the beams. Creepy, one muttered. You've seen worse, the woman replied. She had. She was the only one who'd actually been near combat. Her eyes were sharp, scanning for structural problems, weak beams, hazards. She didn't like the way the ceiling dipped here. Her light crossed the mirror. She almost missed it, the extra face. 4 of them stood in front of the glass, comparing its size to the room, wondering why anyone needed such a big mirror in a place like this. Her reflection arrived a half-second late. That's all? Half a second. Her gaze snapped back. Did you see that? She asked. See what? The man to her left replied. In the mirror. They all looked, and all saw exactly what they expected. The glass is warped, another said. Old. Probably just distorts stuff. Yeah, relax, someone else muttered. She didn't relax. Her eyes traced the cracks, the streaks of old water damage, the faint shapes behind their reflections. For a moment, she thought she saw someone standing between 2 rows of lockers, far back in the glass, though the aisle behind them was empty. A shadow, tall, still, helmet on, uniform neat, too neat. Someone's there, she said. They turned. There was no one. In the mirror, he hadn't moved. Ma'am, there's nothing, the youngest said. Her radio crackled. Report? She hesitated. Locker room structurally stable, she forced out. Visual anomalies due to broken glass, proceeding to showers. Copy that. They moved deeper in, but one by one, they kept glancing back at the mirror. Shadows followed them in the glass, not on the floor, not on the walls, only there. I stretched myself across their reflections, fitting myself into their shapes. A twitch here, an angle of the head there. I made an extra pair of eyes drift open on one of their reflected faces, then close before the real man looked. I waited. Anticipation is a kind of hunger. It started with the youngest. He peeled away from the group near the showers, pretending to check a side drain. His flashlight beam trembled a little more than the others. Everything good? The woman called. Yeah, he lied. He wasn't looking at the drains. He was looking at the small square of metal embedded in the wall, another tiny mirror, more like a polished plate than glass. His own face stared back, warped, elongated by corrosion. Don't tell them, I whispered. Tell them what? He whispered back, without realizing he was answering. That you see them, I said. Behind his reflection, in the tiny warped surface, the other 4 stood just as they were in the room, but with their backs turned. In reality, he could see them in the corner of his eye, facing him. In the metal, all he saw were shoulders and helmets, and the back of heads. They weren't moving. Then all at once, every reflected head began to turn, slowly, too slowly. He stumbled back, hitting a locker. "Hey, you okay?" the real woman asked, taking a step toward him. In the little mirror, her face was still spinning around, jaw unhinging too wide, eyes blackening. "I'm fine," he croaked. "No, you're not," I said sweetly, from the space between the lockers. He looked. He shouldn't have. In the narrow gap between metal rows, where no light reached, a pair of eyes stared back at him. Not glowing, not dramatic, just present, exactly at his height, exactly where another human might stand. They blinked once. He dropped his flashlight. The beam rolled, slicing across tiles, catching the moment his own shadow detached from his feet and slid into the gap to join me. By the time they found his flashlight, he was gone. "Fall through somewhere," one muttered, pounding the tiles with his boot. "There's no hole," the woman snapped. They called his name for a long time. Radios crackled with rising panic. Orders came from above. "Do not proceed alone. Regroup. Exit the structure." Good orders. They tried to follow them, but the mirror had more of them now. When they turned to leave, only 3 reflections walked away. One of them stayed facing the glass. The woman noticed. "Stop," she said. They all stopped. "Look," she hissed. Their reflections froze too, but one, just one, slowly placed its hand on the inside of the mirror, fingers splayed. The man it belonged to stared, shaking his head. "I'm not doing that," he whispered. The glass hand curled its fingers, as if beckoning. I pressed forward, feeling the thin barrier of old silvering and grime between us and them. Surface tension, the skin of a bubble about to burst. "Step closer," I told him. He did. The others yelled his name. He didn't hear. In the reflection, his face was utterly calm as he leaned in. In reality, he was sobbing. When his forehead touched the mirror, it didn't hit, it sank. First skin, then bone, then everything else, sliding into the glass, like water accepting a stone. The woman grabbed his arm. For a second, she felt him. Then she felt nothing. She staggered back, hitting a bench, breathing her hard. 2 men remained with her, eyes wide around the edges, hands locked on their weapons like that would help. "What the hell was that?" one screamed. No one answered. They bolted, out of the locker room, up the stairs, into the dead light of the abandoned base. They thought they'd escaped. They didn't notice that in every shattered window they passed, their reflection showed one more person than there really was. A young soldier, smiling, standing just behind them. They made it outside. They made it to their vehicle. They slammed doors, started the engine, called everything in. 3 missing, the woman said, voice flat, distant. No structural explanation, no visible threat. They were there, and then they weren't. No one believed the full story, of course. The official report said they fell through unstable flooring, that the unit got separated in poor visibility, that panic and confusion led to bad decisions. They sealed the base again. New locks, new warnings, as if doors can stop what lives in glass. Since then, others have come, some with uniforms, some with cameras, some with nothing but curiosity and a broken sense of self-preservation. They all end up in the same place, standing in front of the locker room mirror, looking for themselves, finding me. If you ever break into an old military base and feel drawn toward the damp stairs, if you ever stand in front of a cracked mirror and your reflection blinks wrong, or smiles when you don't, or turns its head a heartbeat too late, remember this: you are not just looking at yourself. You are standing at the edge of a room that remembers every fear it ever held. And if I like the way you look pressed against the inside of the glass, I will invite you to stay. All you have to do is lean in. Most of you think the safest place in the dark is inside something. Inside a house, inside a car, inside a train. You tell yourselves that as long as there are walls, as long as there are doors you can close, you're protected from whatever might be outside. You forget that what scares you from the outside can live on the inside too. You forget about the gap, the small space between where you stand and where you think safety begins. On this line, I am that space. They call it the night line. Last service out of the city, the train that carries everyone who stayed too long. Bartenders, cleaners, students, the lonely ones, the ones who don't really have a reason to go home early. The timetable is simple. Central station to the suburbs, a handful of stops, half of them above ground, the rest swallowed by tunnels, old tracks, older systems, lights that flicker blue and white along damp walls. That's where I grew. Not from rituals, not from curses, from all the things people left behind on those late rides, the arguments that never finished, the decisions made at 2 a.m. when you're too tired to think straight, the people who pressed their foreheads against the glass and quietly decided they didn't want tomorrow. It started with one door, a middle carriage, third set of doors on the left side, if you care about details. You probably don't. You only think about doors when they don't behave. That night, there was an old woman sitting closest to it. Her hands trembled in her lap, skin like paper, veins like faded blue lines under the surface. She clutched a plastic bag with something wrapped in newspaper. She had ridden this train for decades. She trusted it. The stations were familiar punctuation marks in the story of her life. Doors open, doors close. Stay behind the yellow line, easy. She fell asleep between stops. Her head dipped slowly until her chin touched her chest. The carriage was nearly empty, just a man in a cheap suit scrolling on his phone, a teenage girl with headphones too big for her ears, a cleaner in uniform staring at nothing. The lights flickered as the train plunged into a tunnel. For a second, the windows turned into black mirrors. That's when I spoke to the door. Not in words, in intention, in hunger. The locking mechanism hummed against the frame. Metal shivered, unsure. The old woman's bag slid a little on her lap as the train rocked. No one was looking at her. The indicator above the door glowed red. Doors locked. It lied. With a sigh that no one noticed over the sound of the wheels, the door unlatched. Just a little. Just enough. You don't understand how fast you can disappear from a moving train. How easy it is to fall into the black and never come back. There was no drama, no scream. The carriage lurched slightly and she slid sideways in her sleep, head bumping the glass, body leaning into the small gap that opened at the bottom. The cold rushed in. The train swallowed her. By the time the lights stabilized, the door had sealed again. The indicator glowed dutifully red. The man in the suit never looked up from his phone. The girl never took off her headphones. The cleaner dozed, chin on chest, as an icy draft brushed his shoes. At the next station, the cameras showed 4 people sitting in that carriage, then 3. No one questioned it. The old woman was filed away later as a missing person. No one connected her to the train. Why would they? There were no emergency stops logged, no alarms, no evidence. But I had learned something important that night. I could convince the doors to lie. After that, I got bolder. It took time. These things always do. You don't notice patterns until it's too late. A man fell between 2 carriages while the train was moving. Except the CCTV didn't show him climbing between them. One minute he was sitting by the door, the next minute he wasn't. They blamed alcohol. They blamed him. Another time, a commuter disappeared between 2 suburban stations. Ticket validated. Security footage entering the platform, boarding the train, sitting down. He never appeared on any camera at the exit. Everyone assumed he'd gotten off somewhere without being seen. It was easier than imagining the alternative, that the train itself had taken him. The conductors started to whisper. They rode this line every night. They noticed what the reports didn't. Names they heard once and never again. Lost and found items with no owners. The way certain doors hissed a fraction too long when they closed. So they began watching. Good. I like being watched. One night stands out. The one you'll remember when you sit alone on a nearly empty carriage and feel the air change. It was raining above ground. Water streaked the windows in long diagonal lines. The glass shook with every joint in the tracks. The train slid into the tunnel between Central and Old Mill, like a snake diving into a burrow. Lights flickered. Of course they did. There were maybe a dozen people on that train. The late crowd, a man in paint-stained overalls, a couple who had clearly just broken up, but were taking the same train home anyway. 2 friends drunk enough to lean against each other and laugh at nothing. A girl with a backpack, hugging it tight like a shield. And the conductor. He walked the length of the train, boots soft on the thin carpet, hand brushing every door as he passed, checking, counting, listening. He'd read the incident reports. He'd seen footage the public never would. He didn't believe in me, not yet, but he believed in malfunctions, in sabotage, in the idea that something was wrong with his train. That was enough. The train shuddered as it dived deeper into the tunnel. For a few seconds, the roar of metal on metal grew louder, a pressure building in the air. The conductor stopped, frowned, looked up at the lights. They dimmed. The indicator above the doors flashed. Green, red, green, red. Everyone else ignored it. They were used to glitches, to small failures in old systems. The conductor wasn't. He reached for his radio. That's when I spoke to the doors again. This time, I didn't just ask one of them. I asked all of them. Locks hissed. Metal shook. A strip of cold air knifed through the carriage as every door breathed in. A woman close to one of them muttered, "What the hell?" and wrapped her coat tighter. The conductor moved faster now, going door to door, checking the emergency levers. "Stay calm, folks," he said, voice raised. "We're in a tunnel. Doors should remain locked, just a system glitch." He was almost right. The train barreled forward, sealed in darkness. On the monitors in the driver's cabin, I let every door show the same thing. Locked, secure, perfect. On the actual doors, I let the rubber seals peel away just enough that if someone leaned too hard, if someone rested their sleepy weight at the wrong angle, they would meet me. In the third carriage, the girl with the backpack was standing. She hated sitting with her back to strangers. She preferred to stand by the door, fingers hooked on the rail, eyes tracking her reflection faintly in the glass. Behind that reflection, the tunnel rushed by. Concrete, cables, darkness. She watched herself frown. She watched herself blink. Then, for a fraction of a second, she watched herself turn her head away, even though she hadn't moved. She froze. Her real body went still, but in the glass, her reflection kept turning until it was looking straight at the door, away from her, as if someone was standing just beyond it, outside the rushing train, as if the darkness had a face. She blinked hard. The reflection snapped back to normal. "Just tired," she whispered to herself. "Just open it," I whispered back, slipping the thought into her. Her eyes dropped to the emergency release handle. "Don't," she muttered, shaking her head, hugging the backpack tighter. She didn't move. That's all right. I had others. Further down, one of the drunk friends lurched against the door, laughing too hard at something his companion said. His shoulder hit the glass. The door sighed, opened. Just a crack. The roar of the tunnel leapt inside, hot and loud and terrifying. A rush of stale air punched his face. He stumbled, reaching out, fingers grabbing at nothing. For a heartbeat, his upper body was already half outside the train, the black claws of the tunnel trying to prise him away. His friend screamed, grabbed his jacket, yanked with everything he had. Somehow, he pulled him back in. The door slammed shut on my fingers. People started shouting. "What was that?" The door opened. "We're moving. How the hell?" The conductor was there in seconds, one hand on the rail, the other hitting the intercom. "Driver, full stop. Emergency stop, now." The brakes screamed. Sparks lit the tunnel outside in orange flashes. The train shuddered, howled, then slowly, reluctantly, slid to a halt in the dark. Everyone was talking at once now. "I saw it. It wasn't locked." The conductor checked the door, face pale, lips pressed tight. "It's secure now," he said, but his voice shook. He knew. He'd felt the way the door moved. He'd felt something pushing back from the other side. The driver's voice crackled over the speakers. "Ladies and gentlemen, we had an unexpected system error with one of the doors. We're stopped for safety. Please remain calm and stay away from all doors while we reset the system." Behind his calm tone, his thoughts were frantic. Doors can't open when the train is moving. They can't. But they had. For 7 long minutes, the train sat in the tunnel. Darkness pressed against the windows. Emergency lights painted everyone in sickly yellow. The conductor walked up and down, repeating the same instruction. Stay away from the doors. Don't touch them. Don't lean. Most obeyed. Most. The couple who'd broken up sat in tense silence, staring in opposite directions. The woman's eyes were wet and furious. The man's hands shook. "This is your fault," she hissed. "Mine? If we'd left earlier, we wouldn't even be on this train." He rolled his eyes. "It's a glitch, Emma, not a curse." But the words stuck in the air between them. Curse. She looked at the door, at the small gap where rubber met metal, at the darkness waiting just beyond it. A cold draft slid along the floor, curling around her ankles. "Don't," he said softly. "Don't even think about it." He knew her too well. He knew the way her thoughts went when she was angry, when she was tired, when she'd been thinking, secretly, that it would be easier if she simply wasn't anymore. "Just one step," I told her. The train jolted. Power surged back. Lights brightened. The driver announced, "We are ready to resume. Doors are all locked and secure." They were not. As the train started moving again, I opened one door fully. No warning, no hiss, no half measure. Just absence, where safety should have been. But only for one person. To everyone else, the door stayed closed, its reflection perfect, its indicator glowing red. To her, it was wide open, a rectangular mouth full of wind and speed and black. She stood up. He grabbed her wrist. "Emma," he said, voice cracking. "Sit down, please." She looked at him, and her eyes were empty in a way that had nothing to do with me. She'd been gone long before she stood up. I just gave her a door. "It's fine," she said quietly, though her voice didn't carry in the noisy carriage. "You're not seeing this," she whispered. Then she stepped forward. The train swallowed her scream so quickly that everyone else heard only a sharp intake of breath, and then a dull thump somewhere under the tracks. The door was closed. The conductor hit the emergency brake again, heart pounding. They found nothing on the cameras. No open doors, no fall, no body. Just a brief glitch in the recording. One frame of static as the train was moving through the tunnel, then empty seats where she had been. "Maybe she got off at the last station," someone suggested later, desperately. "Sure, if that makes you feel better." After that night, they ran inspections. Updated systems, replaced panels, triple-checked locks, made statements. "We can assure you the doors cannot open while the train is in motion." They said it often enough that most of you believed it. But then, every few weeks, late at night on that same line, someone still disappears between stations. Their ride started. Their ride never ended. No alarms. No emergency stops. Just a gap in the security footage and a name added to some quiet list. If you ever take the last train home and you feel a cold draft by your feet, if the indicator above the door flickers for a second, green, red, if you catch your reflection looking toward the door before you do, stay where you are. Don't lean. Don't press your weight against the metal. Don't listen when a thought in your own head says, "It's fine. Just one step. The door's closed anyway." It might be. For everyone else, for you, I might decide it's open. They like to say the cabin is in the middle of nowhere. That's not true. It's in the middle of me. They don't see it that way, of course. To them, it's just a cheap rental in the woods. Something they found on a website full of smiling photos and staged cushions. A place with rustic charm and no neighbors for miles. That part is true. No one will hear them. There were 5 of them that weekend. 2 couples and a friend who insisted he didn't mind being the 5th wheel. They arrived in the late afternoon, laughing too loud to hear the way the trees went quiet when the car pulled in. The cabin sat at the end of a narrow dirt road, roof sagging slightly, porch leaning forward like it was eager to listen. I was. "You sure this is the right place?" one of them asked, squinting through the windshield. The driver checked his phone. "Yeah, signal's dying, but this is it. Old Pine's cabin. Come on, it'll be fun." They always say that. They drag their bags up the short path, boots crunching gravel. The door resisted the first push, not because it was stuck, but because I wanted to feel how badly they wanted to come in. Then I let it swing open. The air inside smelled like old wood, cold stone, and dust that had been undisturbed for too long. Sunlight slid through the windows in long, thin beams, catching motes that danced lazily in the empty space. "Creepy," the single friend muttered. "Shut up," one of the girls laughed, dropping her bag on the floor. "This is perfect." She meant it. She liked the idea of being away from the city, away from traffic, away from other people. She didn't realize you don't escape everything by going somewhere quiet. Some things are there waiting. They fanned out through the cabin, claiming spaces like animals scent marking a new territory. I felt every step. The floorboards carried their weight and their heat into my frame. The ground floor was simple. Living room with a stone fireplace, small kitchen, a table with mismatched chairs. But it was the hallway in the back that mattered. 4 doors, 4 rooms, each with their own way of keeping what they were given. One of the couples took the room at the end of the hall, a bigger bed, a window looking out into the trees, a wardrobe that still smelled faintly of the perfume a stranger wore years ago. They didn't notice the faint fingerprints in the dust on the inside of the door. The other couple claimed the room to the left, with the old dresser and the crooked mirror. They joked about it being haunted and posted a photo of it before they lost signal. A single friend laughed and took the room closest to the living room. He didn't know that room liked people who felt left out. The 4th door stayed closed. They didn't ask why. People rarely do. They unpacked. They clattered dishes. They made plans, hikes, board games, drinks by the fire. The normal things you cling to, so you don't have to look too closely at the shadows in the corners. Night came quickly. It does here. The trees gathered close around the cabin, branches knitted together, blocking out the sky. Wind tested the walls, feeling for weak spots. I've had years to strengthen them. I wanted them to stay. They lit the fireplace. Flames flickered, light jumping across their faces, making them look like different people in each second. They opened a bottle of cheap wine and spilled some on the rug. They argued about music, settled on something soft to play quietly from a small speaker. They thought they were alone. They weren't. I watched from the walls. from the wiring, from the way the floor creaked in empty rooms, from the silence behind the fourth door. It started with a sound. The girl in the mirror room heard it first. They were all at the table, halfway through a game, when she froze, head tilted. "Did you hear that?" she asked. "Hear what?" her boyfriend said. She frowned. "Like a door? Behind us?" They all went quiet. The cabin answered with its usual noises. Wind, a log shifting in the fire, the old fridge humming. "Old house," the driver said. "It's going to creak." "Yeah," the single friend chuckled. "If it collapses in the night, at least we won't feel it." They laughed. But the girl looked down the hallway. The fourth door was still closed. Good. Later, when the fire had died down and the bottle was empty and their jokes had gotten slower, they decided to go to bed. "Tomorrow, hike," someone murmured. "Tomorrow, hangover," someone else replied. They turned off the lights. The cabin sighed into darkness. The single friend lay in his room, staring at the ceiling. The bed complained every time he moved. He listened to the others whispering, laughing softly through the thin walls. For a while, that was enough. Then it wasn't. Silence layered itself over the cabin, heavy and expectant. That's when I knocked. Not loud, just once. On the inside of his closet door. He sat up, heart pounding. "Guys," he called, voice cracking. No answer. He swallowed, swung his feet off the bed, pattered across the floor. The room felt smaller than it had earlier, the shadows thicker. His hand shook as he reached for the closet handle. "Don't be stupid," he muttered to himself. Old wood, house settling, whatever. He yanked the door open. Coats, dust, the faint smell of old mothballs. He exhaled, laughing nervously. Then he looked down. On the closet floor, barely visible in the dim light, leaking under the door from the hallway, there were footprints in the dust, bare feet, small, pointing outward. "Very funny guys," he whispered, even though he knew none of them had done it. He closed the door more gently, backed away, and climbed into bed. This time when he lay down, the ceiling felt closer. "I should leave," he thought. "You should stay," I answered. He didn't know the difference. In the room at the end of the hall, the other couple lay tangled together, half asleep. The window rattled softly as wind pressed against it. The girl's eyelids fluttered. She dreamed of running through trees. Branches whipped her arms. Roots grabbed her ankles. No matter how far she ran, the cabin was always in front of her. She woke up sweating, heart racing, the room unfamiliar in the dark. "Hey," her boyfriend mumbled. "You okay?" She nodded. "Yeah, just weird dream." She didn't tell him the part where something in the trees had no shape, just eyes that always stayed in the same place while everything else moved. Down the hall, the mirror watched the second couple. The girl who had posted its photo lay on her side, phone on the nightstand, screen black. She slept with her back to it. Her boyfriend snored softly. The mirror faced the bed. For a long time, it reflected exactly what it should. Then it didn't. The blankets rose and fell with their breaths. Her hair spilled over the pillow. The mirror showed all of that, and a figure standing at the foot of the bed, long, thin, face turned toward the glass, not toward them. The figure wasn't in the room, only in the reflection. If she had opened her eyes then, she would have seen nothing when she looked around. If she had turned her head toward the mirror, she would have seen herself sleeping peacefully, alone with her boyfriend. She didn't. She slept. The figure moved closer in the glass, stepping silently around the bed until it was standing right behind her reflected body, its head bent down as if listening to her breathe. The mirror trembled in its frame. I smiled. It was the end room door that claimed the first one. Around 3 a.m., the boyfriend there got up to use the bathroom. The cabin was very still, the kind of stillness you get in places far from roads or cities, the kind of stillness that makes every small sound feel too loud. He pattered down the hallway, rubbing his eyes. The floor complained under his weight, each board telling me exactly where he was. When he came back, half asleep, he didn't notice when his hand reached for the wrong doorknob. He opened the fourth door. He shouldn't have been able to. They had tried it earlier when they explored the cabin. It had been locked, the handle unmoving, the frame stubborn. Now it swung inward without resistance. The room beyond was dark, colder. It smelled wrong, like damp stone and old breath. He frowned, waking up more fully, fingers relaxing on the knob. This isn't... The floor gave a small, eager creak. He stepped inside. Why? Because humans hate incomplete pictures. He'd already opened the door. His brain needed to know what was behind it. The urge to just take a look is older than your fear of the dark. He reached for the light switch. His hand found the wall. The switch found him. The door closed softly behind his back. He didn't scream. There wasn't time. The next morning, the girl in the end room woke up alone. At first, she thought he'd gone to make coffee. She smiled, stretched, called his name. Silence. She got up, pulled on a sweater, and stepped into the hallway. "Hey, where are you?" she shouted, trying to sound playful. No answer. The cabin felt different in daylight, less threatening, less tight. But something small in the back of her mind noticed that the fourth door was now just slightly ajar. She knocked on the bathroom door. Nothing. She checked the kitchen. Empty. The others were still asleep. Her voice shook when she called again. Okay, not funny. Upstairs, the single friend stared at the ceiling, eyes red. He hadn't slept much. Every time he closed his eyes, he heard the knock from inside the closet again. When he heard her calling, he got up, grateful for any excuse to not be alone. Maybe he went outside, he said, trying to sound logical. They checked. The car was still there. No footprints led away from the cabin. Not in the mud, not in the leaves. Maybe he went for a run, someone suggested weakly. In what? Pajamas? The girl snapped, panic sharpening her voice. They searched the cabin again, room by room, opening every closet, looking under every bed. No one touched the fourth door. They all noticed it was open a little more now. None of them told the others they'd seen it. Blame the human brain for that, not me. You don't like putting fear into words. It makes it too real. Hours passed. They argued. They called his phone. No signal. They decided he must have wandered off. Maybe he hit his head. Maybe he was hurt, waiting for them to find him. They told themselves that story because the alternative was too strange. The woods swallowed them easily when they finally stepped outside to look. Trees closed around them. Paths they thought were clear twisted back on themselves. The cabin watched from between trunks, always at the edge of their vision no matter which direction they turned. One by one, they drifted further apart. I could have taken them out there, where the ground is soft and the roots are hungry. I didn't. I wanted them to come back inside. Eventually, tired, scared, and snapping at each other, they did. The cabin felt even smaller now, the air heavier. There were only 4 of them, and 4 doors. By late afternoon, they had made a decision. Leave. Now. Drive back before it got dark. If he came back and found them gone, they'd figure it out. Leave a note. Call someone. They packed quickly, movements jerky. The girl from the mirror room went to grab her phone, still on the dresser. She paused. The mirror was dusty. Too dusty. There was a clean shape on the surface now, an oval roughly the size and shape of a face pressed against it from the inside, wiping the dust away in a perfect circle. She stared at it, breath catching. Behind her, in the reflection, there were 4 people standing in the room. Only one of them was real. Guys, she whispered, voice cracking. The figure closest to her, in the glass, turned its head slowly. Its face was wrong. Familiar clothes, wrong angles. Like someone had tried to remember his features and failed. Her missing friend, smiling. She spun around, empty room. When she looked back, the mirror only showed her, alone and pale. She didn't tell the others what she'd seen. She just said, "Let's go, please, now." They grabbed their bags. They headed for the front door. It didn't open. The driver swore, pulling harder. "It's stuck," he said. "No, it's not," I thought. The cabin shifted around them, just a little. Walls straightened, floorboards swelled. The hallway stretched a fraction of an inch. The front door remained exactly where it was, but the outside felt further away. They tried the back door, locked, windows, stuck. "Break one," the single friend said, panicking now. "We can pay for it later." He grabbed a chair, lifted it, turned toward the nearest window. In the glass, he saw something that stopped him. Not his reflection, not the trees. Inside that pane, the cabin was empty. No furniture, no people, no him. Just the shape of the room, with 4 closed doors at the end of a hallway that seemed too long. When he blinked, the normal view came back. His hand shook. He lowered the chair. "What are you doing?" someone snapped. He didn't know. They were all breathing too fast now. The walls seemed closer. The ceiling felt lower. The cabin creaked, not like wood, but like something stretching after a long sleep. The 4th door was wide open. No one remembered seeing it move. "Don't," the mirror girl said, when the end room girl took a step toward it. "We have to check," she whispered. "He might be in there." "He's not," I thought. She walked anyway. The room beyond looked harmless. A bed, a small table, a chair facing the window. The air was colder, like it hadn't been breathed in years. "See?" she said, voice too loud. "It's just a room. Maybe he..." The door slammed shut behind her. The others screamed, rushed forward, grabbed the handle. It didn't move. "Open it!" the single friend shouted, yanking until the wood groaned. From inside there was nothing. No thud of fists, no voice, no sound at all. They pounded, called her name, swore, cried. The door stayed shut. I already had her. I didn't need to show them how. Eventually they backed away, shaking. There were 3 of them now, 3 doors. They didn't go near any of them. They huddled in the living room as the light outside died, clutching their bags like talismans. The fireplace was cold. No one wanted to strike a match. They didn't want to see more than they had to. Night pinned the cabin in place. Wind walked around it. The floor creaked under nobody's footsteps. One of them started laughing. It sounded like a sob. "This is insane," he said. "This can't be happening. Doors don't just... People don't just..." He couldn't finish the sentence. The single friend stood up abruptly. "No," he said, eyes wild. "No, I'm not staying here. There has to be a way out." "There isn't," I could have told him. "I'll find it," he told himself. He marched down the hallway, past the 3 doors, not looking at them, trying not to look at them. That's why he didn't notice that one handle turned slightly as he passed, as if inviting. He headed for the bathroom window. It was small, but he thought he could fit through if he broke it. He didn't get that far. Halfway down the hall, every light in the cabin went out. He froze. "Guys," he called. No answer. Behind him, 3 doors slowly, softly began to open. If you had been there, you would have said the sound was just the house settling. Old wood, old hinges, drafts. You would be wrong. They widened, inch by inch, until the darkness inside each room pressed against the threshold like water behind glass. He didn't turn around. He didn't need to. He could feel it. Something was waiting in each one, something shaped like absence. He ran. In the dark, the hallway felt longer than it should have. His feet slapped the boards. His breath tore at his throat. Hands grabbed at the air, searching for a wall, a frame, anything. A door closed gently just ahead of him. He ran into it full speed. The cabin swallowed the impact and gave nothing back. By morning, there was nothing left to find. The rental listing stayed online for a while. Old Pine's cabin, rustic, isolated, perfect for groups. The reviews got stranger. 1-star ratings with no comments. Messages that said only "don't go" before they were deleted. Eventually, someone took it down. But the cabin is still here. I am still here. And somewhere out there, someone is looking at an old property listing, or following a faded sign down a dirt road, or telling their friends, "It'll be fun. It's just a cabin." If you ever walk into a place and feel like the walls are listening, if you notice there are more rooms than people, if you see a door that was locked the first time you tried it and open the second, leave right then. Don't. just take a quick look. Don't just spend one night. Don't tell yourself cabins don't keep what walks inside them. Some do. I do.